I think, yeah, normally political thrillers tend to be just that, they're just the political, and I think in television or in film they can be a little bit dry, and I think Lucy's writing is interesting because she steps inside the lives of the human beings involved. And
so Chimerica is about the events of Tiananmen Square in 1989, the student protest, which was peaceful for quite a long time and then was violently put down by the authorities. And our story centres on one American photographer who's a young man starting his career in photography and happens to be in the hotel that oversees the moment of the man standing in front of the tank, one of the defining pictures of all time. We then cut to the same man 20 years later working in America covering the presidential election, so Trump's rise to power. As that's happening, he hears a rumour that perhaps the tank man that made his career originally is still alive and possibly living in New York. So he tries to find him.
It started off as a play Lucy Kirkwood wrote. Lucy adapted the play for the screen.
One of the main things that changed was updating it to be the Trump election sort of backdrop to talk about these issues of manipulating images, the role of news and its responsibility to the public. I just responded very much to the fact it was a entertaining, propelling thriller that had a kind of motor of all of those genre elements, but it also was trying to say something, and something really contemporary and important, I felt. And as well as that, a really emotional story that could move people.
It was a one-day read immediately. Thought it was fantastic. It's not often you get a thriller which is exciting and passionate, but also has something to say. I think Lucy's a political writer, but her way of accessing it is so human that almost you don't notice the politics, which I think is a really interesting take, I think.
I think what's interesting about her approach is that she very much wants to examine all sides of the political spectrum. So it's certainly not a sort of manifesto of one aspect of politics. The left come in for as much criticism as the right in this story. And our hero is really an anti-hero, the main character. He makes terrible mistakes.
We're shooting China and New York in London and Bulgaria. I think the New York, the American aspect was slightly clearer. I think the Chinese side of things was a little more complex because there's a lot more limited Chinese cinema to dip into, and the story has a magical realist element as well, which was new for me. But I'm a big fan of Wong Kar-wai, In the Mood for Love, and the love story has a tragic element in China. So I thought to take Alan Pakula and Wong Kar-wai. If I could take those two elements, we're in good company. I think it definitely needed the time to spread itself out. I think there's so many ideas in the play that I think they would have been distilled and lost within a film, but there's something about the long form, there's 3 hours altogether, that just gives us time to sit with the characters a little bit longer and go on slightly more emotional journeys with them that in a thriller would have been lost. And those are the things that would have been taken out.
One episode, as it were, gives you the space to kind of explore other things. So at least he's such an inquisitive writer. I think we would have had to have got rid of a whole strand and probably a whole lot of characters. And I think one of the joys of this is that you go on a journey. It takes you somewhere and you weren't quite expecting. I think obviously there's the joy. I find it quite joyful, the process of making sure each, the overall arc of the story's got to work. But each episode has absolutely got to tell its own story too, and make you want to come back and watch the next one. So that's a discipline that's really interesting and creative, I find. I just rewatched Very English Scandal, the Hugh Grant, which just the brilliance of that writing and incredible performances. And I love the fact that it's political. I don't know if you're aware of that show, but it's very funny, and it's also very kind of unusually touching. But the characters have elements of grotesque about them, but they're also, you like them. And I thought it was a really interestingly executed piece. It was one of those pieces you think, yes, I'm so pleased it's done well, because it keeps the doors open for more stuff like that.
It's an older show, but I'm a big fan of Engrenage, the French. And I think sometimes we look to a different country and see something that has a real effect. But there's something about that show which captured a really exciting thriller always, with a tremendous human element. And there's no police show in the UK that's done that, I don't think. And